Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And of course, as we develop and we meet the needs of 2 billion new people that will be joining us on the planet by 2050, how are we going to be able to provide the infrastructure and the basic needs of all these new people, plus take care of the 7+ billion that are already here? And there are people actually thinking about that, working, strategizing to bring that about so that we're actually enhancing and increasing the quality of life as we move through the 21st century and not just existing. And one of those people sitting right beside me is Antigone G. Payton, Esquire. She's an attorney, founder and CEO of Cloudagy Law in Alexandria, Virginia. And Antigone, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you back. And Antigone has been with us before, and we were talking about big data and all these other things, but tell us about Cloudagy Law first, and then we'll get into our topic of the day.
Sure. Cloudagy Law is an intellectual property and technology law firm. We focus on high-tech, new emerging tech, as well as trademark and copyright issues. And as part of the work we do, we're working with a lot of cloud technologies as part of our infrastructure, as well as clients who have them as part of their own infrastructure.
Well, I think it's really important for people to understand that as we move through the 21st century and we're developing all these new tools, concepts, as well as cloud computing and what now is being called big data, is that there's a tremendous amount of intellectual property that's being generated out of that, and that's creating a whole, not just industry, but industries.
It is, and what's interesting is now we're storing so much information in the cloud, which is really the internet and other areas where we have large data repositories. It's very hard for us to make sense of all that information, and it's very hard for us to understand where all this information sits on the cloud. So really the next generation that we're looking at now is how do you aggregate that information and how do you apply analytics technology to it to find the information you need to solve particular problems in an efficient manner.
And this is kind of the push-pull as far as what's going on within the industry, is how much are we pushing into the civil society and government and business. At the same time, how much are they able to pull off of this and be able to use? And that really leads us to our conversation of what kind of legal issues do these firms, the big business and even government today, need to be concerned about as far as the legal responsibilities they have for big data?
Well, really, it's big businesses all the way down to brand new startups. Everybody needs to be concerned about data privacy, data access issues, whether certain information they're gathering as part of their business can leave the country and can come back into the country. So I'd say that privacy, cross-border data issues are huge issues that companies need to think about. They also need to think about, can I be selling this information? Can I be sharing it? Can I be paid by advertising agencies who want to target the right consumers based on my information? So we've seen a lot of information in the public media as well as in the courts on that very issue.
So the answer is yes. There are legal ramifications for all of this. They need to be very concerned about it. So what do they do next? How do they actually go about protecting themselves so that they're actually meeting the obligations, needs of their own organizations, firms, and government, but at the same time make sure that they're well protected, but also protecting their client base, whatever that client base may be?
Well, wherever this information comes from, they need to have the right rights, and usually that's a contractual issue. So when people are signing up for a particular program or giving a company access to their information, whether it's financial information or data on social media, they need to make sure they have the right rights. So that's a terms of service or a terms of use issue. From there, it's a question of where are they storing that information? If they're storing it in the cloud, is it a local cloud in the United States? Is it a cloud in another jurisdiction? and they need to understand what they do to get that data out of the cloud. Because one of the issues we find with cloud technology is if you build it, people will come, but sometimes you need to get the data out. And how do you get that information out for the users who need it?
Well, let's pursue that, because that's really a very good point. If it's stored, extraterritorial, so it's somewhere outside of the confines of the United States, if that's where you're doing business, or if you're in South Africa and it's being stored in Egypt, as an example. So what are some of the ramifications, and how do they go about protecting it when it really is in the hands or physically stored somewhere that's beyond the reach of their normal court system, and it may be a totally different legal system?
It's tough because there's a lot of leakage of data in ways that we haven't intended. So you always need to have a backup plan. If you have data stored locally and that's your primary data source, you should have something that's 50 miles away from that primary data center that's a real live redundant backup. So if Chicago goes down, if there's something that happens in that data center, do you have something here in Ashburn, Virginia that's your live backup, so your users can continue to do what they need to do with less than a blip? Now, sometimes we need to have data stored in other jurisdictions, but we always have to keep in mind governmental access, pipeline issues. We've seen real-world instances where the pipeline basically goes down in a country, or somebody's watching the data pipeline coming in, and we just need to be aware of that and be able to react to the situation.
Well, I can honestly attest, I was in a country where they had a small demonstration, and the entire internet and the cell system totally vanished, and it stayed down for 12 hours, and people stopped doing what they're doing. All of a sudden, magically, everything came back on. So it's a very real threat in some of these countries. What are some of the benefits of companies, NGOs, governmental agencies, as using the big data and protecting the environment, which fits right into the theme of Emerald Planet?
So one thing that's wonderful about big data is if we can collate a lot of information, we can start to get trend information when it comes to environmental impact. We can slice and dice across the data to formulate hypotheses, test those hypotheses, and see if in fact that our hypotheses are proven correct. So big data gives this ability to look big picture in a way we never could before.
And looking at it, this goes to really our next question is about when you're mining all this big data. Maybe we ought to really define the term mining of big data, because we haven't done that yet. And then how do large organizations, we know about the smaller startups and all that, but large organizations, how can they use big data to solve big issues?
So when it comes to data mining, really it's finding the information you need in a larger data set. But there are many ways we can get to that solution. Sometimes it's aggregating information and then collating that and then spitting information out that's actionable items, right? So we're seeing dashboards that companies are creating where, let's say you have a very large network like Department of State, and you want to be able to understand where the security threats lie to that network. Where do you need to upgrade the software that's sitting on the computers? By taking a lot of information and putting it into one place, you can then display action items for the users to go and do something that they need to do for the network. So that's just one example of big data mining to get action information. Solving big problems. I mean, there's a myriad of ways that we're solving big problems with big data these days. Some are as simple as taking a number of different social media sites and understanding where the conversations are having about your product. That's actually very complicated. And it's taking a lot of data from different sources and honing it so that you have information that's actionable and usable again. When it comes to the environment, if we're looking at long-term environmental trends, when it comes to sea level in New York, for instance, when we look at the number of tornadoes in a particular area, we start to get this longer-term understanding of what's happening with our climate in a way we never could before, and that's really exciting.
And it's just like looking at the data as far as earthquakes. We think of severe climate change, but it's been almost a 300% increase in the category 6 to 8 earthquakes around the globe. And when you have 195 of your 300 major cities sitting over earthquake faults, we need to know a whole lot about what's going on. Looking at the other side of that, as far as the special challenges to balance, and again, back to economy, environment, but also the civil society, how can we best use big data so we make that the citizens, as we go from 7 to 9 billion people on the planet, how do we best protect them and at the same time have the proper infrastructure to take care of these needs over the next 20 to 30 years?
This is such a hot issue right now when we're talking about government access to millions of phone records in the name of national security. When we're talking about access to our energy grids to understand how we better protect them, again, from a security point of view. But at the same time, we have to temper that with privacy considerations and consent by consumers. And I don't know where that line lies, but I know we're going to continue to cross it and feel it out, both from a legal and from a practical point of view. And we're going to continue to struggle with this tension between protectionism and access to information.
Yeah, looking at that, and that's, Antigone, what you're saying is absolutely correct. There's always this delicate balance between how do we really serve the public in many ways, how do we not abuse the public and make sure that we really have their benefit at interest in all we're doing. We're almost out of time, but any particular technologies that are coming up that's balancing big data along with cloud computing that you know of that we should probably mention?
There are lots, and I'll say one that they have in common.
1 minute to do it.
One that they have in common is taking information that's related to national security, social media, and other areas where there's a lot of activity, and allowing users to understand where the important information lies. And I know of lots of great technology that we work on. A lot of it I can't talk about, but I'd say that they're allowing us to do what we do better, and that's a wonderful place to be.
Okay, well, we do. We have about 30 seconds that we can end up. What do you see for the next 5, 10, 15 years, Antigone, about where we're going for big data and cloud computing?
So what's interesting is big data and cloud computing has brought people back into the mix, because we need really smart people to help us bring information from different cloud sources, analyze it, and spit out the information that we need to solve these problems.
So you feel like that we're going to be, do you feel like we're going to be in good shape as we head towards 2050? What do you think?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Of course.
I think that we're going through an amazing time period when it comes to technology, and I feel like 2050 is going to look nothing like what we look like today.
We're only the scratch of the scratch, as I keep saying, where we're going. Thank you for being with us in the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. Antigone G. Payton, who is an attorney, founder and CEO of Cloud-G Law. And thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come through from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are going to carry us through the 21st century as we add 2 billion new people to the planet. Yes, 2 billion on top of the 7 billion that we already have by 2050. And so there are a number of people that are working on a day-to-day basis to figure out what is that new world of 2050 going to look like, and what's it going to, the shape and the form, the scope and scale that we're going to be able to deal with over the next 20 to 30 years. And we have a gentleman that's been doing this for a number of years and also is going to be with us, carrying us through to 2050. Kelly G. Heidman, who is an attorney and partner of Sigma & Mion in Washington, D.C., and this is one of the top 2 largest law firms on patent approvals in the planet. And Kelly, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to let you tell your story because when I was going through all the information about your firm, it is truly impressive.
Well, Sam, the firm Chagru Mion started in the late 50s, before even I was born. And one of our mottos that we like to say is that we protect the universe of intellectual property. So that means patents, trademark, copyright, trade secret. We advise our clients on how to build their patent portfolios, and we also advise them on how to avoid litigation. But when litigation has to be done, we have a remarkable track record with that. And we also like to think that we understand our clients' businesses, because our roughly 100 professionals are not just attorneys, they're also physicists, chemists, electrical engineers, or software engineers like myself.
I tell you, it's just incredible, and looking over that in the years of dedication that you've had, and to think about your firm over these many years, it's evolving all these new technologies, going in from no computers to everything is on the cloud, and big data is what we're going to be talking about just now. But looking at that, how do you, and this is an added question to this, how do you incorporate your stakeholders in what you're doing so you're meeting each of those individual needs so that as they go forth, they can grow and mature and add value even back to your own firm?
Well, a lot of our clients, we've had relationships with them for decades. And we've grown together out of a mutual partnership in innovation. So we like to think of ourselves as kind of a partner with our clients, and we work with them the way they want.
So it's really a collaborative environment you're working with, not only within your own firm, but also with all those clients out there that really become almost part of the corporate culture of what you're all about.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of them are kind of like family, because we've known them for so long, and we've worked together and just built relationships. Some of our employees, some of their employees started about the same time. We've grown up together, and this kind of collaboration is something that makes it such a great place to work. And whether the client's large and wants us to help them secure a strong portfolio in an economical way, or whether they're medium or smaller and would like us to kind of be their own patent counsel, their in-house outside counsel, we'll work that way with them as well.
I think it's fantastic. Of course, now we're going to move to big data. This is really one of the thrusts of this. We're talking about intellectual property, the environment, and big data. Let's define for our domestic and international audiences, what is big data?
Oh, that's a tough question, Sam, because it's such a big buzzword. It's one of the most interesting new buzzwords, and it means a lot of things to a lot of people.
And usually the bigger the buzzword, the least people really truly understand what it's all about.
Well, I think there is a certain amount of healthy ambiguity to it, because it's such a large and multifaceted issue. So, for example, to the proud young father who sees Junior take his first steps, big data is a video that's bigger than 20 megabytes, and you can't attach it to your Gmail. On the other hand, to the Center for Nuclear Research in Europe, they have collider, a particle collider with 150 million sensors, each of them taking 40 million readings per second. To them, that's big data. So it depends on where you are and what perspective you have. But in general, there's a lot of excitement about the amount of data that's available today from different sources, not just in-house sources, but maybe sources like the phone company, the phone records, weather data. Let me give you an example. There's an insurance company out there who mines the weather data to find out when a hailstorm might come. And if they have members, customers who are in the area, they'll send a text message to the customers. So they're able to mine data from the weather, combine it with their own records, and provide a new kind of information for their customers.
I tell you, that's absolutely incredible. And the whole thing about it, Kelly, is they're being proactive, not just reactive. And of course, in years past, we didn't have that opportunity to do that. But if you have a hurricane coming through or a tornado, if there's any way that the insurance companies, using your example, could actually alert people in advance, you know, save, protect, do wherever you can. First of all, save yourself. That's an incredible service they have. And again, going back to just your long years of service as a company, building that corporate loyalty, I mean, that's priceless.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah. Well, looking at it, as far as the general information, data, and also, of course, communications is all part of this big data set out there. What are some of the advances that are going on right now as far as the technologies, and then, of course, that'd be hardware, software, they're being used to actually mine that big data and use it in ways that's appropriate, either for the organization, the government agency, or private business?
So big data has big demands on technology, and it's one of the big factors that's spurring technological advances from soup to nuts. There's capture of data, there's storing of data, transportation and communication of data, organization of data, mining and analyze the data to get what people need, which is real information.
So looking at your firm, then, your firm has grown up through all this technological change and also the new advances as far as software development. So what does your company do to advise your clients as far as how they can best go out and identify the best technologies or product services that they need, and then to enhance what they're doing?
Well, we actually take kind of a big data approach, in that we have software programs that will go and do some data queries at the Patent Office's own website and find within hours when a patent examiner has actually taken some kind of action, positive or negative, with respect to our clients' cases. We download all that data, combine it with what we know about these cases, and then we can have that information to the client within 24 hours without printing paper and without wasteful use of any resources. So it's a win for them, it's a win for the environment, and it's a lot of agility that you just didn't see in law firms in the past.
Looking at, we're going to add to your question base here, but looking at the international, looking at the great strides and advancements in the continent of what we use all of Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, where there's actually more and more intellectual property being developed in those areas. They're not just manufacturing and doing the basic things, but they're actually adding to the intellectual base. What is being done to enhance the capabilities in these different continents and geographical areas, these developing countries, to make sure that they're advancing along with the developed countries that we've known over the last, say, 200 years?
Well, one of the things our firm can do is make relationships with Latin American intellectual property firms and keep them advised of the latest changes to U.S. law. For example, the America Invents Act, which went into effect just recently, changed our whole system from a first to invent to a first inventor to file system. So now we're working with our Latin American partners to make sure they know and understand that their clients, if they want patent protection in the United States, they need to do it right away.
Yeah, and this is one of the things really important. And of course, most people, think of particularly the U.S. as U.S.-centric as far as this first to discover idea and everything that went into that instead of the first to file. And that's a huge difference.
It is, and it creates a mandate for everybody from the inventor to the CEO, from the R&D director to the patent attorneys to actually get these applications on file quicker and quicker.
Yeah, and that's where the real value is in this whole thing, Kelly, as you know. But looking at small to large-scale businesses, they come up with new ideas. Usually that'll lead, hopefully, to a patent or patents, and then you go to developing a whole portfolio of patents. So what is the process for that, and what do they need to think about as they're going through this to make sure they truly are protecting their best interest?
Small to mid-sized companies are the ones that really need our help in partnering up with them to set up a patenting program in their own system. They usually start with a great idea and some real innovators. From there, they go to a big business and sometimes skip the step of instilling within their employees, within their programmers, within their developers, a patent discipline. And so one of the things we can do is work with them to set up an internal process that bubbles these ideas up so that we can help them get those things patented and protected.
And this is one of the things they have to realize, that this is really, and this may be some of the blockage, this is truly an investment, it's just not a cost.
It's a business investment, and we do it for business reasons. Sometimes you'll start off patenting an idea, and then you realize, hey, we're going in a different direction. Sometimes you have to cut off projects to start new projects. It's always a little bit of give and take.
Yeah, and also too, it's the best allocation of resources. Last question, how does big data relate to this whole movement towards green jobs?
Well, I think big data is one of the most green sectors of technology that there is, because with big data, we don't need to go take any resources out of the earth. We don't need to build anything. The data's there. It just needs to be mined and the value withdrawn from it.
So looking at your firm over the next 5, 10, 15 years, what do you see? You've got to be quick.
Okay. I see us taking advantage of big data and helping our clients protect their big data intellectual capital.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic, and we've had Kelly G. Heidemann with us, who is sharing about what is going on as far as big data. We didn't mention it, but I know cloud computing, Kelly, is always the part of this whole thing. And it's just exciting what is coming down and what we've done over the last 50 years and what's going to happen over the next 50 years as we create the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfripp at AOL.com.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America, and reading is fundamental.
Looking at
we're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking at the globe that's adding 2 billion new people by 2050. And so once we're at 9 billion, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people as far as the infrastructure is concerned and the daily needs, but not just to sustain these people, but also to enhance and have a higher quality of life than what they would have experienced in the past. And we have someone who's sitting with me that's going to be talking about his organization that's very important because of the humanitarian work, but also disaster planning, recovery, and avoidance in many ways. This is Joel Thomas, who is the Federal Portfolio Manager of G&H International. Joel, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you, Sam.
Glad to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about G&H and the services part of this, and what does G&H actually mean?
You know, that's a great question. A lot of people ask, does G&H stand for? Well, short history, our firm has been around since 1997. Our owner and founder is Bob Greenberg, and he actually acquired the company from a law firm and was in business with a partner for several years doing work internationally. And since then, modern revisionist history has taken over, and we've sort of rebranded ourselves Greenberg's Honey Badgers. And that's sort of our colloquial insider name there. So what we do as a company, we focus on community preparedness. And we do that in emergency management. We do that with the Homeland Security Enterprise. And we really focus on building capacity of local, state, federal partners throughout the country.
Well, looking at this, you've brought us a very complicated hot chart that we have right here on the video for our domestic international audiences. So tell us a little bit about this. I know it's very important because you said this is one of the slides that you really wanted to talk about. So let's address what's here, and then we'll just move through the rest of our conversation.
That sounds great. Well, as you know, disasters don't respect boundaries. In fact, I got involved in this in the U.S. Shortly after Hurricane Katrina, when we began to work with the Department of Homeland Security to begin to address the problems nationwide that stem from communications interoperability, governance frameworks that didn't exist, et cetera. And so as we began to look at how do we build a framework in this country for how to improve our disaster coordination capabilities nationally, how do we do that? And so you need a framework. And when we look at interoperability, a lot of folks think about technology, but actually it's much broader than that, Sam. There's actually 5 lanes of sort of an interoperability continuum that sort of are the pillars of our work and sort of frame our work. And it actually was developed through DHS's SafeCom initiative some years ago. And those 5 lanes are governance, standard operating procedures, technology, training, and usage. And so when we approach this problem in the country and really around the world, this is a framework we use to build upon and measure against. How well are we doing?
Now, looking at your title, this Federal Portfolio Manager, what does that really mean? I know you're working with Department of Homeland Security. You're reaching out to local, state, and even other federal government agencies. That's a very complex set of people that you're dealing with and interacting. Many movable parts of stakeholders in all this. So what is your position in all this, and how can you actually advance this whole thing, thinking about we need to be prepared now for disasters and we don't even see them on the horizon?
Absolutely. Well, as far as my position is concerned, our company has a federal portfolio and a state and local portfolio, and I manage our DHS, FEMA. We've had a history in Department of Justice, a number of areas of interest that we've worked on. What we're doing in our federal portfolio is really looking at 2 primary functions. We're looking at addressing the governance issues on the national from a top-down and a bottom-up standpoint. And we're looking, frankly, to break down the technological Tower of Babel. And so what we're doing as far as governance is concerned, I see you've got a screenshot here for our viewers. We've been recently working in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And the Commonwealth of Virginia has created a first of its kind statewide information sharing plan. And they have a Commonwealth of Virginia plan that has an emergency operations plan that includes an information sharing annex. One of the things that has become very important in disaster management is the fact that there's a lot of data out there. This is a big data show, but no one knows where to get it, where the authoritative source is, how to package that information and make sense of it. And so working with the Commonwealth of Virginia, we've begun on the governance framework to develop a plan and then to inform the standard operating procedures with specific information requirements that can then inform day-to-day practice. And so, that's a lot of what we're doing these days is working to tie the governance and the technology together so you're not developing technology in a vacuum. So
looking at tying governance, technology, also the processes, the techniques, because many times that's equally as important as the technology and the government's part. How do you actually balance that so every stakeholder feels like they have a seat at the table, they have their input, and then when a disaster does strike or there needs to be some kind of mitigation move forward, that they feel like, hey, we can buy into it, we know what's going on, and we're part of the team?
I love that question because really the success of everything we've ever been a part of has been the fact that it's been practitioner driven. That the needs and requirements that we're working against are directly derived from people in the field, boots on the ground, first responders, public safety officials, citizenry. And so when we look at how do we make an impact, it's got to be focused on what are the needs at the local level? What are the information requirements? There's an old chart that was put out several years ago. It said 86% of incidents in the nation are managed locally. 12% at the state level, only 2% at the federal level. So that says a lot. A lot of the data is local. And so working with them to say, well, what are your information needs? And against certain standard operating procedures for a hurricane, for an earthquake, for a hazardous materials incident, et cetera. That is really the crux of the matter.
Well, looking at it too, and also you're looking at community preparedness as well as homeland security. There's a big push-pull between those two because community preparedness can be, mean many things. Local communities where they're small, agriculturally based, urban areas, suburban locations, and then this whole notion of you're throwing in homeland security.
Sure.
And that's, in a sense, almost a springboard, but also an overlayment to all this. How do you balance these two twin pillars as far as the work that you're doing at G&H International, but at the same time, again, make people feel that they're totally a part of what's going on around them?
It's important in our work with our federal clients. A lot of federal government officials like to think they're running the world, but as I mentioned earlier, they're actually running 2% of the world when they're in charge. And so it is important, though, to have the institutional support as well as the grassroots dialogue that's informing the process. And so, we look at best practices around the country. For example, there's one in Kentucky called the Community Hazards and Mitigation Planning System. And that is a place where citizens and communities can engage in identifying critical infrastructure, identifying risk associated with those, and working with officials at the state and federal levels to actually work on collaborative plans. And so one of the ways we've begun to look at inclusion and making sure everybody's voice is heard is by helping to create something called the National Information Sharing Consortium. This consortium is comprised of local, state, federal officials throughout the nation, actually in Canada as well. And this body is there to basically arbitrate and discuss and identify, what is the voice of the community and helping to cut through, what is the most important area of interest to focus on, or what are the most important areas to focus on. And so when we are working together with them, we're working with them to identify those requirements, have the voice of the community heard for a variety of communities, and implement that through various projects we're implementing.
Now, many times when you talk about governance, and again, you're looking at let's say the federal level, you say it's only 2% of what's going on is from that area. But again, they're looking at, okay, we're going to have a specific budget, we're going to allocate it across the whole United States, which, there's thousands of different jurisdictions. So how do you look at those areas which are the most critical, really should have the biggest investment as far as various inputs, at the same time to make other people feel they're not left out of this whole process?
Absolutely. I think there's a number of processes that go on regularly throughout local, state, federal government agencies. There's regular threat and hazard assessments that go on. We work with those. We work with those frameworks, and we work with the communities to define what those needs are. For example, we're working on mutual aid. We're working with the thought leaders in the nation to advance the request and acquisition of mutual aid. What am I talking about? I'm talking about when the bad thing happens, sharing information is great, but getting that help from my neighbor and making sure there's no barrier to getting help from the neighbors in time of need is important. Another area is working recently on a cross-border initiative. It's a presidential and prime ministerial initiative in the U.S. and Canada, and we're working on improving cross-border communications interoperability and collaboration, working again with the first responder community to define the problems, identify what it's going to mean when an ambulance crosses the border from the U.S. into Canada, to make sure that ambulance isn't seen as a truck carrying narcotics, but it's seen as an ambulance that can offer a service, and making sure they have the communications capabilities to reach back to the U.S. when necessary. So all of this is informed, as you mentioned, by working with those people at the table, and that's part of our consultative practice, is to work with them to work against existing frameworks nationally that exist, and work with them to define their requirements locally so we can implement solutions that matter and make a difference.
Well, we're about running out of time, Joel, and this has really been enlightening. But we have this best practice between the United States and Canada. Of course, we have a neighbor to the south, Mexico.
Yep.
And then we have all of Latin America that we're working with, the Western Hemisphere. So how can we extrapolate, and we only have about a minute and a half to do this, extrapolate how this experience between the U.S. and Canada, communications, sharing of resources can happen with Mexico South?
Well, you know, I think what's important is that through all of our lessons and experiences working with our clients, we've identified that people need to have the information they need, when they need it, from whom they want it, and for how long they need it. And conversely, people need to be able to share information with whom they want, for how long they want, and for specific mission purposes. So we've created tools that help you to do that. There's something we're deploying throughout the country called the Situation Room. And that's actually being first deployed here in Virginia. And so as we look at working with clients north and south of the border throughout the U.S., the Situation Room is so simple it's scary. It's simply having data that's relevant to a specific user in a specific role in a specific agency for specific catastrophic events that are going to happen. So I think taking a very customized approach using open technologies that can be deployed up and downstream, I think is an important way to approach it.
10 seconds. What do you see for the next 5 or 10 years?
I see more data. There's 2.5 quintillion bits of data shared last year. Mobile usage has doubled every year since 2008. We're going to see more and more data being used. We've got to figure out how to use it.
That's going to keep on going, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Joel, thank you for being with us. Joel Thomas, Federal Portfolio Manager of G&H International Services. And this is just fantastic to learn about all the things that are going on for the Western Hemisphere. And of course, this will extrapolate to the world, I'm sure. And thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is? What? More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow! Oh!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of Emerald Planet, its president and executive director, as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. And we're looking around the globe in 144 different nations for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products. And as you can see with our panel that we're getting ready to have on right now, the people that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And one of the issues as we add 2 billion new people to the planet is how do we take all this tremendous information that resides around the globe and to process that in a way that actually is going to make a difference. Not add to the confusion and make it more opaque than ever before, but add to transparency, to reduce corruption, and provide cybersecurity for all citizens, no matter where they live, what country, what area of the globe. And as we have more and more climate change, which is really affecting how people go about their daily lives, we need to be able to plan for this. So disaster planning, mitigation, and recovery is also part of everything that we're talking about. Right beside me is Antigone G. Payton. She's an attorney, founder, CEO of Cloudegy Law. And then we have Kelly G. Heidemann, who is also an attorney and a partner with Sugarman Mian in Washington, D.C. And then Joel Thomas, who's here, not an attorney, and he's the Federal Portfolio Manager for G&H International. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with the Emerald Planet. And Antigone, we're going to start off with you because you've been with us before. But looking at adding 2 billion new people to the planet, I mean, you know, people are saying we don't have enough resources today, and yet in all the work that you're doing as far as the patents, the other intellectual property, that you're saying as we're constantly adding to it and we can take care of it. So how do we mine this big data, use the cloud computing to make sure that we really are enhancing the lives of all these people to come?
Well, one of the things that I think has driven this effort to look at big data is globalization of our economies. We are affected by the economies of other countries, and likewise they are affected what happens in the United States. So where I think big data going is really globally, right? When we're talking about big picture issues when it comes to drought, to crop management, to looking at the infrastructure, to prices of steel. We really have to look at the entire planet and see how we deal with these resource issues and constrictions, and big data can help us get there.
Kelly, you're with the largest firm on the planet as far as patents is concerned, and you're dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. But the uniqueness of such a large firm is that really this personal touch that you bring. So you're reaching out to people in the United States, that's understandable, but yet you really see it that all 196 nations on the planet need to have access to patent services, trademarks, and copyrights. So how do you feel that we're going to move forward the next 20, 30 years in order to provide equality, which, as you know, really hasn't happened over the past probably 50, 100 years? We're going to bring more and more of these new countries from Africa, Latin America, and Asia into the fold so they're contributing on an equal basis across the globe.
Well, that's a great question, Sam. And I think you'd agree with me that technology is really a fast-moving train. It's not slowing down, and we don't really want to get off. We just want to get those other countries that have lesser developed technologies on board with us. And to that end, one of the things that attorneys all across the world are working together to do is focus on the harmonization of laws, so that what you can expect in one country is similar to what you can expect in another country. And by doing that, at least by having a set of laws that's reasonably similar in terms of intellectual property, then businesses, even small ones in foreign countries, can invest with at least some modicum of intelligence as to what to expect from legal systems in countries outside their own.
Kelly, I want to follow up with a second question of that, is that, you know, many countries fear, you know, the big developed nations like the United States and the Germanys, Japan and others of, you know, really making everything uniform homogenizing the earth, if you will. But I think with the personal touch that you have is that you can respect the local cultures, the nature of the societies within, at the same time bring them forward so they can actually even more benefit from the patent and the trademarks and copyrights. How do you balance that, respecting local traditions and cultures, customs, at the same time bring across so that they're empowered as far as the value of their patents and the other intellectual property?
So my view is that countries need to take advantage of their sovereignty. So to the extent that they want to harmonize the laws within their country with those of other more developed nations, they need to take advantage of their sovereignty to make sure that lawyers from other countries can't bypass their local attorneys. And so, for example, our firm, Chagru, we have relationships with attorneys in firms in almost every country where you'd ever want to get a patent. And by making sure that your country's laws protect your local legal industry is one way to make sure that your rights within the country, the rights of your own inventors, are not going to be downtrodden as technology sweeps over the world.
Well, Joel, I know that your firm, the G&H International Services, is really focused on disaster, all aspects of that. And at the same time, as we move forward, the climate change is becoming even more dramatic. People are being able to actually almost look out their windows and see what's going on around them. But at the same time, to protect life and property, we need to be able to be better predictors and also to get the information out to people at a quicker pace. So what is G&H International doing to accelerate this distribution, at the same time to extract the information out of this big data set that's out there and be able to share it on a more immediate basis?
That's a great question. You know, we do focus on the disaster preparedness continuum, which includes planning, response, recovery, mitigation. It's a whole suite of activities, and part of that includes understanding these changes in the environment. And when I look in our community, what the threat is, varies from time to time. I think what's important is that with the increased population and the increased infrastructure, we have more billion-dollar disasters now, because the cascading impacts of any of these disasters, which might have, some studies actually suggest that there may be not statistically more significant number of disasters in certain domains, but because there's more people and there's more infrastructure, there's certainly greater consequence. We can all agree on that. And so one of the things we're doing is working with communities to identify the information they need to prepare for, respond to, and recover from these disasters. And so, one of the technologies we've patented helps to do that. We've deployed it here in the Commonwealth of Virginia for the governor, the Situation Room, and that's deployable at every level of government, even extensible to citizenry. We're looking at working with them to understand, well, let's take those paper-based plans and turn it into real-time situational awareness. So when weather events are coming, when there are alerts and warnings coming, when there are resources that are available to them, that they're able to access that information in a consolidated fashion all in one place versus having to search around and really unknowingly in the dark for that information.
Well, Antigone, looking at your firm, Cloudergy Law, I know that you've really been almost a pioneer as far as using the cloud computing, and then you've really moved on to define and how to best use the big data that's out there. So looking at what you're doing, and then also with Kelly and Joel, how do all of you mesh together so that people are getting the maximum benefit? You respect each other's individual organizations, but at the same time enhance the services that you can provide to your clients?
Well, I think for us, it's knowing who our clients are and utilizing cloud and big data technologies to better communicate, because communication is very important with what we do. Deadlines are very important with what we do. So we wanted to find a way to really use technology so that 24/7, no matter where our clients are across the world, they can get access to their information that relates to the various projects we're working on, but also make sure that we have protective infrastructure. So if our primary data center goes down, we have live backups, and we're not in a situation where, because of these disasters, we're at odds and we can't find the information we need. So we kick the tires on a lot of data, we throw some out and say it's not ready, but we really want to try different things and be creative to figure out how we do what we do better.
Kelly, regardless of size of the organization, whether it's a fresh startup or an old line company that's been around for 100 years and been in manufacturing or what have you, looking at, as we move forward in the 21st century, the patents, all the intellectual property rights that people have, that's real investment. Many times that's worth more than the actual product or maybe even the service that they're providing. How do you educate people, not convince them, but educate people they really need to take this all seriously and to move forward now and not just be waiting until somebody actually takes off with whatever their intellectual property may be?
Well, let me answer that from my personal experience. I'm a software engineer by trade, and I work with a lot of smaller companies that are, some are startups and some are a little bit more mature, but a lot of them understand that if they want to attract investment, they have to behave very responsibly with their main asset. And in the case of software-related inventions, it's the idea. It's the idea. Mm-hmm. And so I work with those kind of companies and help them understand that today we're in a first-to-file system, and I help them focus on where are their strengths and where is their technology going to lead them so that they can build not just a patent, but a patent portfolio that's going to help them attract investment and also protect their flagship products.
Joel, we're going to go out with you because we only have about 50 seconds left.
All right.
Looking at disaster, preparing for disaster, what do we need to think about over the next 20, 30 years towards 2050 as governments, policymakers, elected officials struggle with the change of the climate and the more dramatic weather events that we're facing?
I think we need to learn how to better engage citizenry. Recently, our company worked on a project that yielded a lessons learned from Hurricane Sandy's social media report. How do we harness the power of social media? How do we discover what information is out there? How do we filter the signal from the noise? How does that inform official processes? And we'll see for the first time ever, actually, social media was used more widely than ever before during Hurricane Sandy. So I think the institutions are starting to catch up, and I think that's a big area of focus.
Well, we're going to keep talking as all the credits come up on the screen. And Antigone, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And being our new #1. And thank you for coming out.
Sure.
Kelly, you did an absolutely fantastic job. You got to do more of this. You really did a good job.
I already invited him back.
I look forward to it.
Joel, thank you for being with us as we talk about disasters. Thank you for being with us as we pray.